Hey everybody, it's Wednesday morning. I just got down here and got the lights turned on. And if you'll see Butterbean hiding in his cave right there in the middle, that's what I was kind of concerned about. I wanted to come down and check and see how he was doing this morning, because yesterday afternoon, all I was seeing him do was sit in his cave like that. He has his face pointed sort of downwards. It almost looks like he's in there moping or depressed or something. I don't like to put the human emotions onto animals, especially something like a fish. But just by appearance wise, he seems to be acting that way. Now, when I first turned the lights on, he was out and about swimming around. And the reason I actually got the camera out is because his belly is enormous this morning, and it's all misshapen. It's not just a full round belly, it's all lumpy and misshapen. And that's not that unusual for a puffer to have a misshapen belly like that after he's eaten a large meal. It just depends on what he's eaten. And if he's got a bunch of shrimp and snails and stuff in him, you'll see sort of lumpy, bumpy belly shape. And by the next day, once the digestion has happened, he goes back to looking sort of smooth and round. So this morning, he's got an enormously round belly, except for the odd shape of it. I'm kind of hoping he comes back out and swims around again. I'm not sure what's going on with him. I checked the water yesterday, and everything was fine. The nitrates weren't very high. And for a fish like a puffer that's a euryhaline animal, they can stand pretty high dissolved solids in their water. So the 30 part per million nitrates or whatever that were in this tank were nothing. It would barely turn the vial red, and that was before the water change. So I did a water change and, thought, I don't know what else to do. The water's fine. I did a water change anyway. And then instead of feeding him his freeze-dried krill that I've been putting in there normally, he hasn't really been eating that the last couple days, but I did put a few snails in there. But all it was a few small pond snails. I mean, if he had eaten all of them at once, it wouldn't have been enough to impact the size of his stomach. So why he's all loaded up the way he is this morning, I don't know. The only thing I can think is that I had some ghost shrimp in this tank, and perhaps he had been eating on some of them. But now that I'm looking around, I actually see some movement. I've been waiting to try to find some. And right back here, I've actually got two of the ghost shrimp, but two of the larger ghost shrimp that were in here. And there were only about 6 in the tank. And I haven't really seen many of them over the last few days. Just I saw 2 yesterday when I was doing the water change, and now I'm seeing those 2 again this morning. So that could be all that was left in the tank. And if that's the case, what did he eat last night to make him look like this? Again, I don't know why he's just sitting still like that. Normally when I'm in front of the tank like this, especially if I'm talking and filming, it makes him nervous, and he paces the glass and he goes into the back of the tank and tries to hide and stay out of the way. But this morning he's acting just really unusual for his behavior. And again, yesterday afternoon he was acting really unusual like this. So now we're going to hopefully get a little bit of a look. You can see how big and rounded out his belly is, but that's only on the one side. If you look at him straight on, it's the one side is big and full like that, and his other side is much flatter. He's kind of lopsided when it comes to how round he is. Actually, now that I'm looking at him, and it's been maybe 20 minutes since I got the light on and got my camera and everything, the roundness is actually sort of beginning to even out a little. I wonder if he didn't eat something very recently. But what would he have eaten that would have made his belly that big? I mean, I literally would have had to put 4 or 5 big pieces of krill in there in order for him to get that full after having a meal. And I never feed him that much at any one time. When he was smaller, one big piece of krill would make him look all big and bloated and full like that. But now that he's getting a little bit bigger, just a couple pieces of krill don't blow him up like that. And again, I didn't give him any krill last night. All I put in the tank last night was 2 small pond snails, probably about the size of his own eyeballs, which is, he can pretty much swallow those whole. So, not really sure what to make of this. Unfortunately, I've got to get going today. I've got work I got to do. So I'm going to be gone for most of the day, and I'll be back later this afternoon. So I'll check on him when I get home. Like I said, I don't really know what else to say. The only other possibility is, if you will notice all these little holes in the Java fern that's in here, that is caused by the pond snails. The reason pond snails and ram's horn snails are considered nuisance snails in the aquarium hobby, and snails like apple snails are not, is because those snails, the non-nuisance snails, only eat dead plant material and algae and things like that. They don't eat live plants. Whereas pond snails will actually eat your live plants, and you wind up with these, Swiss cheese looking leaves where you've got all these little holes all riddled through them. So that is definitely evidence that there is, or at least was, some pond snails in here. I always try to throw a bunch in when he's not looking, and then that way they can sort of hide and establish, and it gives him some forage, and it gives him enrichment, and he's able to hunt for the snails throughout the day. So maybe he went on a midnight darkened hunting spree last night, and a bunch of snails that I didn't know were still in the tank were still in there, and maybe he got to them. I don't know, but if it is just food that's making his belly all blown up like that, then by this evening he should certainly be looking back more to normal. And I gotta say, I'm already really relieved at just how... Let's try to zoom in so we don't scare him by getting too close. So he's definitely big and round. There's no question that he has got a huge round belly on him. But the smoothness and evenness of it is what's making me a little more relieved as I sit here. I'm not kidding. When I first turned the lights on and looked at him, I had to do a double take. It looked like he swallowed a bucket of nuts and bolts. He had lumps sticking out of his side, and he was all misshapen, and one side was wider than the other. It was really, really strange looking. And now that I've been sitting here for a few minutes, I'm actually seeing another tiny little shrimp right there. Should be about dead center of your screen. If you see that little thing right there sort of on the rock right by the edge of the leaf, that is the really small ghost shrimp. So he apparently has not been plucking them off. I've got at least 3 of them left, and I only started with about 5 or 6. So he's back into his cave, and I guess he's going to go back to just hanging out and sitting in there. So make sure you're subscribed. You don't want to miss any updates. I will certainly keep you posted as to what's going on, and maybe next video I'll prepare a little more, and I'll darken the tanks behind us so we don't get all the glare on the screen and everything. Either way, if you're subscribed, you won't miss anything else that I got coming up. Don't forget, this one is my brackish tank, and I will see you all later this evening.